The plasma glaive hissed through Vanguard Jackson Thorne's chest, the white-hot edge cauterizing as it carved. He did not fall. Instead, his hands gripped the glowing shaft, pulling himself deeper onto the light to reach the warlord's throat. Archon Alara watched from the core, her skin a blinding, terrified silver. Would he survive the reach? How much would you sacrifice to save a world that isn't even yours? Subscribe and witness the true cost of human resolve as we descend into the heart of Lumina. 6 hours earlier, a chipped crystal tea set had sat undisturbed on a low table in the royal spire. Then the first Saurian orbital strike hit, turning the porcelain to dust. Alara's world was a scream of light. The sky, once a soft indigo, now bled the harsh, toxic orange of Saurian ion trails. Beside her, Sentinel Hover was a pillar of steady violet light. He was old, his bioluminescence fading to a dim gray at the edges of his limbs, but his grip on her arm was iron. "We must descend, Archon," Hover grunted. Beneath the observation deck, something shifted. The spire groaned, a deep, crystalline shudder that vibrated through Alara's marrow. She looked back at the tea set. It was the one with the tiny crack on the rim she had meant to fix for years. Now it was gone. Everything was gone. A beam of white light punched through the ceiling. Dust and pulverized crystal filled the air, thick and suffocating. Hover threw himself over her. His weight was a sudden, final anchor. When Alara finally pushed herself free from the debris, the Sentinel's eyes were open but vacant. A jagged shard of the ceiling had claimed him. Silence. It was a physical weight. Alara crawled through the wreckage, her own skin pulsing a dark, rhythmic purple. She was the last. The Nova resonance required her blood and her grief. But she was just a girl in a collapsing basement. She tumbled through a sudden breach in the floor, falling into the underarchives. The air smelled of ancient paper and ozone. She pressed herself into a corner, trying to dim her light. The gardens used to smell like lavender and rain, and maybe if I just... A yellow thermal flash swept the room. 3 Saurian raiders hissed, their green scales shimmering under the sickly light of their rifles. One stepped forward, a guttural laugh vibrating in its chest. Alara squeezed her eyes shut. Then he dropped from the rafters. He was small. He had no scales, no tail, and no light. Just battered gray plating and a face that looked like a map of old scars. Vanguard Jackson Thorne moved with a mechanical, ugly efficiency. He did not dance. He collided. He ducked a heavy swing, put 2 rounds into a chest plate, and drove a blade up into a jaw before the third raider could scream. Jackson Thorne was only the beginning of the human response. Join us as we explore the legends of the Fringe. Jackson stood over the 3 dead raiders, his breathing heavy and ragged. He turned toward Alara. His eyes were dark, devoid of the soft Athelian glow. "Evening," he said, his voice a low gravel. He held out a hand. Alara hesitated, then reached out. His skin was rough, calloused, and startlingly warm. It was not the ambient heat of a room. It was the intense, concentrated thrum of a furnace wrapped in skin. "You are a human," she whispered, her skin shifting toward a confused silver. Jackson looked at the carnage at his feet, then back at her. "That is usually enough." Jackson Thorne did not move like the warriors of Lumina. He was kinetic, heavy, and lacked the bioluminescent grace of the Athelian Guard. While he worked, the sound of the medical brace's microvelcro was a harsh, synthetic rasp against the absolute silence of the cavern. A mundane noise that felt absurdly loud while a world died above them. He tightened the strap around Alara's broken wrist with practiced, rough hands that made the pain dull to a manageable throb. "We have 2 miles to the core," Jackson said. They were joined in the deep tunnels by Vex, a 4-armed arachnoid medic, and Pike, a human who seemed to carry enough explosives to crack a continent. As they descended, the crystalline walls began to pulse with a deep, rhythmic light that matched the Archon's blood. Jackson's eyes were fixed on the rhythmic pulse of the blue crystal, his mind a repeating loop of beat, beat, stay steady, stay. But a wet, rattling cough tore through his throat, splattering dark blood across the glowing floor. "You are redlining, Vanguard," Vex hissed, her compound eyes reflecting the dim light. She explained to Alara that humans were biological anomalies that could override their own survival instincts with chemical surges. They were furnaces that burned their own fuel to keep moving long after the gears should have seized. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like madness, but to a human, it was just a refusal to lie down. He did not stop. And now, beneath the core's heavy hum, the blade was inside him. The cold drop moment returned, but the context stripped away the terror, leaving only awe. High Overseer Crawl sneered, his plasma glaive buried deep in Jackson's side, believing the fight was over. He was wrong. Jackson's hands, charred and scarred, gripped the burning shaft. He pulled himself forward, sliding the white-hot light further through his own torso to close the gap. Crawl's yellow eyes went wide. No species did this. No sane creature used their own impalement as a bridge. Jackson drove a combat knife into the soft seal of Crawl's throat, the steel disappearing into the warlord's neck. Alara reached the core, her hands touching the ancient, living crystal. As the Nova resonance finally ignited, a cascading wave of indigo energy erupted from the planetary marrow, surging through every crystalline vein and ancient tectonic fault line until the entire world hummed with the collective grief and fury of 8 billion souls. A shield of pure light that turned the night sky into a sanctuary. The Saurian fleet fell like stones from the heavens. In the quiet aftermath of the core chamber, the light settled into a soft, steady silver. Crawl was a slumped heap of green scales. Jackson lay on the floor, his breathing a shallow, wet whistle. Alara knelt beside him, taking the hand that had caught the final plasma charge meant for her back. "Is the sky still there?" Jackson whispered, his voice barely a breath. "It is blue again," Alara replied, her skin glowing a soft, peaceful silver. "Because you stood in the way." Jackson's eyes drifted shut, a small, tired smile touching the corner of his mouth. Alara looked down at his ruined, blackened palm. The skin now a permanent map of the sacrifice that had saved a world he didn't even belong to. The heat of the human furnace was finally cooling, leaving only the steady, silent hum of the crystals. The galaxy spent centuries cataloging humanity as average, but they forgot to ask what happens when an average man finds something worth a world. If you were in Alara's place, would you have trusted a species with no natural armor to be your shield? Tell us your thoughts below, and come back tomorrow as we chronicle the next legend of the Fringe.